Pee-wee Herman has passed away. Actor Paul Reubens at age 70, battling cancer, unbeknownst to, I think, pretty much everybody, and passing away today after that 5-year battle. You know, when we were talking about this, when we started the show, we were both saying how much we enjoyed watching Pee-wee's Playhouse on Saturday mornings. It was a ritual for you.
Absolutely. Never missed it, ever.
And I'm not sure how I would describe it. I think the idea was you watch that show, and as I said, it was so different from everything else that was out there, right? When you watch kids' cartoons, it kind of gave you permission to be silly.
Total kookiness. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was for kids and adults at the same time. It really merged the two worlds in a way that like Muppets used to.
It's funny because as you say that, I think to myself, there's just a lot of stuff in there kids would not have gotten. No. That as an adult you did get, right? Which is remarkable for someone to be able to pull off. So we wanted to just find out more. If you do remember Pee-wee Herman, we reached out to Eric ALPER. So who knew? Eric ALPER. Eric, first of all, thanks for being here this afternoon. I wondered, I mean, you kind of, you're a bit of a cultural historian, if you will, beyond just music. So Pee-wee Herman, to you, what did he mean?
Oh, I think he was so great. The fact that he probably lived his life based on the fact that you're only young once, but you can be silly forever.
Yeah.
And his absolute childlike innocence and the curiosity of Pee-wee Herman was so brilliant that he became such a cultural icon so quick back in 1986 when it first aired up until about 1991. Just so much clever wordplay. There were so many things for kids and adults, but more importantly for me, it was just a rebirth of slapstick comedy that I grew up watching. If you were a fan of the Marx Brothers or that kind of physical comedy of Saturday Night Live or Steve Martin, you fell right into this because it was just taking it to a whole other level, breaking down that fourth wall between the audience and the actors and actresses. And, Pee-wee Herman was a family-friendly character for all we know, but it just made it so enjoyable for viewers of all ages.
Yeah, it's interesting as you say that, though. I think, for some parents who found their kids watching that show and watch for 10 or 15 minutes going, wait a sec, I'm not sure you should be watching this. That's what it was.
You're not supposed to watch this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because Paul was... before and afterwards, it's not like that he just kind of exploded on YouTube, and that was the only thing that we knew of him. He was already an actor. He was in the Blues Brothers playing the waiter, and then afterwards he was in Batman Returns as Penguin's father. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Mystery Men and Blow. So he had a lot of really serious characters, and that kind of led us to think that maybe Pee-wee was just one of these special characters for a number of years that we all loved. But if he kind of came up now, it would be very different to talk about him because we wouldn't know that line between, well, is that really him? Like, is he that all the time? And we know, he was Paul Reubens that was just walking down the street as Paul.
But I don't think the vast majority of us actually accept that, Eric. Like, I think for us, he was, and always will be Pee-wee Herman. Paul Reubens is like barely, I mean, I hate to say it in these terms, but it's like a sidebar almost. Like Pee-wee Herman was the thing. And he managed to kind of survive scandal.
Yeah, especially back in 1991 when for the indecent exposure in the adult theater. Cancel culture, maybe before it was actually a word, along with Sinead O'Connor, who also passed away. I think he kind of got a little bit of a raw deal, but he kind of, went on a little bit of a lower profile, did what he needed to do, but certainly he was rather untouchable for a number of years. There were a lot of years where people just didn't want to work with him because he might have just been too toxic, not based on his own personality, but in the way that Hollywood and the producers and the directors kind of treated him a little bit of an outcast.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. He was, I think, for quite a while. You said it's a number of years. No one wanted to have anything to do with Paul Reubens, which is interesting because people forget he played a character. So you kind of blame Pee-wee Herman as the person who got in trouble when it was just this actor named Paul Reubens who happened to play a character. But I wonder, and maybe it's not fair to even speculate, had this happened in the age of social media, what would have happened? I mean, he would have been persona non grata, I think, for the rest of his career.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. It took him almost 25 years in order to come back with that stage show of the Pee-wee Herman show, and then that became an HBO special. But even when that HBO special came out, the jokes were relentless, and especially and not to go off too much on a tangent, but if it would have happened today, it could have gone either way because porn is so relevant and so easily accessible. I'm not so sure that he would have had to go to a movie theater to actually watch it. So different times for sure. But, all I know is this, though. Nobody can do tequila at a karaoke without having to do that dance.
Even if
you don't want to, that everybody in the audience is thinking for you to do that dance.
It's so true. That song, and it's funny because it was Tequila Day last week, and so we played that song, and for me, that is the Pee-wee Herman song. What do you make, Eric, of the fact? So I'm going to read the statement that he left with his team for them to share after the news of his death broke, because he had been sick for some time and hiding it, evidently. So he wrote, "Please accept my apology for not going public with what I've been facing the last 6 years. I've always felt a huge amount of love and respect from my friends, fans, and supporters. I have loved you all so much and enjoyed making art for you." What do you make of him staying so silent in his years while he was clearly suffering with this disease?
Two really quick points. The first memory that I thought of when I saw that statement was it's exactly what happened with Freddie Mercury. When he came out the day before his passing, saying that he was dying of AIDS. And that he was HIV positive for a lot of years, privately away from the spotlight. So that was the first kind of moment that I had. It's like, oh, this is exactly what happened with Freddie Mercury. The second one is it's that I don't know whether or not if he actually believed that he would have felt the love had he would have come out with his medical issues, because I think a lot of people would have been paying tribute and wishing him well and wishing him to beat it. So I think the ability for him to do it in private might have just been a psychological click in his head that he just didn't want that general public anymore. He already had enough slamming with what the world was offering him when things were bad. Sometimes when you're a public figure, you just don't want to go back. And it's kind of like, who needs you? Who needs your sympathy when I kind of needed it 30 years ago?
I wonder,
well
kind of not to do specifically with this story, but as we're talking about the show, and I realize not everyone saw Pee-wee, Pee-wee's Playhouse on Saturday mornings. If you did, great. If not, looking back on it now, you can find them on YouTube. I can't imagine, Eric, and I'm not asking as a question, I'm just thinking in my head, what that pitch meting must have been like, selling that idea for a kid's show to a major network.
And a bow tie, and I'm going to talk like that.
It's wild to think about how that must have worked.
I don't put any faith, Jerry Seinfeld once said, that the biggest issue that Hollywood producers have is talent, and that there are enough things that have passed by their system through and that have been a success without the help of a producer or the Hollywood bigwigs, that they have been wrong so many times. I think that they probably would have all turned this down and said there's no way, except for maybe one person that said this is brilliant, and then that's it. I wonder also, going back to the question of the statement, I wonder if him making that statement so late was his way of not tarnishing the memories that we have of that show. Because if he would have came out 2 years ago and then passed away, we would have all thought, oh, what a sad last couple of years that he had, and it kind of ruins us looking at that show. Yeah. Maybe because it was so shocking, it kind of allows us to look at it with not so much hard feelings, because we're only getting it for the last 2 hours.
Yeah, and by the way, I thought of just after you answered the question about what that must have been like at a pitch meeting, and you mentioned Seinfeld, I thought, for the longest time, of course, we always found out they pitched Seinfeld as a show about nothing.
Right.
And look what it ended up doing. So maybe it wasn't that off base. Hey, Eric, thank you so much. It's always great talking to you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. We'll talk soon.
You bet. Eric Alpert, music and cultural historian, if you will. A great, great TV show from so many years ago. I thought it ran longer than that. He said around, 6 years? 85 to 91, 86 to 91?
Too. But it's because, for me, it was like pivotal years. It was all through high school, right?
Saturday morning, Pee-wee's Playhouse.